saw the video that I posted. It's on the module. Oh, where's that? I'm sure it's fine. Right here. Okay. So, what do we call that? Lord of the Rings. Okay. Yeah, it's good stuff. Okay. Soundtrack, Pandora. Yeah. Without words. No words. Just music. Okay, so the video kind of goes over the designing of the Constitution and so forth. So it's kind of a good recap, and you get to learn a little bit about the founding fathers. So if you haven't watched it, if you got time this weekend to watch it, Grant was live. The video quality wasn't fantastic, but anyhow, it's something that might help you a little bit with the test. Okay. And the last page of the notes here is, okay, so on September 17th, 1787, they agreed on the new Constitution, but it had to be sent to the states. Okay, and this new government, guys, this is the one we have now. This Constitution that we have now gave the national government a lot more power than it had under the Articles of Confederation. And that scared a lot of people. Okay, and so you had to get 9 states to ratify this thing. And so there was a big fight over it, and you're going to get the Federalist Papers that are written, okay, which you guys read 2 of, okay. There's 85 of them. Now, John Jay only wrote 5 of the 85. The rest were written by Madison and Hamilton, okay, and are to help weaken opposition to the new Constitution. So the Federalists supported the new Constitution, the Anti-Federalists opposed it, right? So New York and Virginia are deeply split on this, okay? And these papers, these essays are going to help convince people, okay? So Delaware was the first state to ratify, and New Hampshire was the 9th state, and that's how many they needed. Eventually, all 13 would ratify, okay? But if you don't get New York and Virginia, 2 of the most influential states, you're in trouble, okay? So eventually, everybody did, okay? Now, this is what it looked like in the newspaper, okay? They did not use their real name. They did this under what's called a pen name. I think you probably heard of a pen name before, right? Philo Publius, okay, which means citizen, okay? And they didn't want to, you know how if Donald Trump says something, some people they have to oppose it just because he said it. You know what I mean? Hamilton was kind of the same way. People didn't like Hamilton. I mean, some people did, but he was disliked by many. Now Madison, couldn't harm a fly, but all right. So what these states said, Massachusetts, North Carolina, and Virginia, they said, we will only sign this Constitution or ratify it if you put in a Bill of Rights. Okay? Because this is so important. Because the Bill of Rights are written down in black and white so that we know what our rights are. We have arguments over these rights all the time, like guns. Okay? We have rights over speech and religion. Okay? So this is very important that they did that. And the Federalists promised that the first Congress would pass a Bill of Rights. Okay, so the Constitution is ratified, okay, in 1789. Okay, the first Congress is going to be in 1790. All right, and they are going to pass a Bill of Rights. Now, one of the authors of the Bill of Rights was Madison. Okay. Madison is going to become the first Speaker of the House of Representatives. Okay? So he didn't think there needed to be a Bill of Rights. but he's going to end up being the author of the Bill of Rights as the leader of the House of Representatives. Okay? How many members are there in the United States House of Representatives?
Right now or back then?
Right now. Yeah, there were 65 back then, okay? And 26 senators because there were how many states? 13 states, okay? It's a lot smaller back then, okay? So, George Washington will win the first election, okay, unanimously, okay? He'll win all the electoral votes, okay? Now, that's pretty hard to do. Has anybody gone unanimous since? No. Has anybody been close to unanimous since? 1984. 1984. Ronald Reagan won 525 electoral college votes, and 13 his opponent won. One state, Minnesota. Okay? The candidate for the Democrats, Walter Mondale, was from Minnesota. He won his own state. Okay. Here's a name you've all heard of, Richard Nixon. Yeah, you heard of Richard Nixon? What do you link Nixon to? Watergate. Okay. First president ever to have to resign from office, right? He won re-election in 1972, 520 electoral college votes to 17. His opponent was from Massachusetts. At the time, they had 17 electoral college votes. He won his home state. Okay. So it's not too long ago, 1984, where the country was kind of united behind Ronald Reagan. Reagan country, except for Minnesota. Okay. So what's going to happen less than 3 weeks from now? Somebody going to landslide? I asked the other class this. Who do you guys think is going to win? Okay, you can't get on the fence here. You got to have a feeling. Okay, you got to have a feeling. Who's going to win? How many people think Trump's going to win? The polls are showing Biden ahead. Hillary was ahead in the polls too. Yeah, I don't know what's going to happen, guys. I really don't. Okay. It's going to come down to those. It's going to come down to Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan. I think Trump's going to win Florida and Ohio. No Republican has ever won the presidency without winning Ohio, ever. Okay. If Trump loses Florida or Ohio, it's over. Okay. But I think he's going to win those states. So I think it's going to come down to Pennsylvania. I mean, Georgia might even be in play for the Democrats. Wisconsin. I mean, I know Wisconsin's only, 10 electoral college votes, but that's how close this election could be. Okay, it could be very close. So we'll see. Okay. All right, that's the last slide there, I believe. Okay. All right, so I did want to spend a little bit of time talking about the Federalist Papers, and especially number 10. Now, you guys that did that, it was kind of pretty easy to figure out Federalist number 71 by Hamilton about the presidency, right? If you go back earlier in our notes, like when they set up state constitutions, their people were elected for 1 year, okay? They were afraid to give too much power to people. So when Hamilton recommended 4 years for the president, that scared people. Like the president could amass an enormous amount of power in 4 years, okay? But I think looking back, it probably makes sense, right? 4 years, especially since the campaign season lasts longer than a year, which is crazy. Europeans laugh at us at, just how long our campaigns last. I mean, they started over a year ago campaign, okay? Now, granted, the Democrats had, you know, about 12 people that were running for the nomination, and Biden eventually got it, okay? But it's, in Europe, the campaign seasons are like 6 weeks at the most, okay? It's crazy, okay, how long ours is. Okay, so if we only had, you know, president for 2 years, they'd spend half of that time campaigning for president, okay? Would anything get done? Okay. Now, Federalist number 10, guys, is by Madison, and it's phenomenal. Okay, and he talks about what are called factions. Okay, he's talking about human nature. Okay, and humans tend to gather together with people that think like they do. Okay. I did watch this thing on Netflix last night called Social Dilemma. Have you guys seen it yet? How many of you guys have Netflix? Okay, check it out. It's about social media. And they have a bunch of former executives from Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, Twitter, okay, and how those companies manipulate us and manipulated themselves. So these are the guys that actually designed the programming. Okay, so when you flip on a video, right, they find out what you like because they want you to stay on that program. So they feed you what you want. You know what I mean? They have algorithms that do this. Okay, so it's very manipulative. Okay, so you really only, like, say I'm a news junkie, right? You guys know I'm a news junkie. Okay, so when I get on Twitter or I get on Facebook, those two companies send me stuff they know I want to read. So if I'm not careful, I will only hear what I want to hear. And people that think different than me will only hear what they want to hear. Which means that is creating division within our country. And they talk about how this is being used by dictators. Facebook is being used by dictators to totally drown out the other side, the opposition parties. Okay? It's really interesting, okay? And just the fact that the impact it's having on society, on your generation, and even my generation. I wasn't raised with these. You guys were raised with these, yes? I mean, it was 2001, 2002 where the internet and smartphones started coming out. Okay, well, the internet was in the 90s, but these smartphones and these social networking programs, okay? And how many of you guys feel like, honestly, you spend too much time on your phone? I do too, okay? So I'm not being a hypocrite here. I'm guilty. My wife is guilty. She stayed off Twitter and Facebook for years, and I was on it. And then she's on it now. I'm like, honey, go to bed. She's flipping through that. She keeps flipping through that. Okay. So it's interesting to hear these guys that designed the programs that had made us all addicts talk about how they didn't really intend to harm people, but they are harming people. Okay. So, yeah, that's kind of interesting. So this social media really helps create factions and make those factions even stronger. And Madison was worried about, if you thought about factions when you were reading, did any of you guys think of like what they meant, what Madison meant by a faction? A lot of students will say, right, political parties are factions. Yes? Okay. Now, we kind of fall into two groups. We did the whole thing with the left and the right, and some of you are moderate, some conservative, right? And so, guys, we join with other people that think like we do, okay? But I think what Madison was more talking about rather than political parties was what's called interest groups. Okay, have you heard of this? The National Rifle Association? Okay, this is one of the most powerful interest groups in the country. Okay, if you're a Republican and you don't support the NRA, well, they raise hundreds of millions of dollars, and they help get people that believe in the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms, they help those people get elected. You understand? Have you ever heard of the AARP? Okay, the American Association of Retired Peoples. All right, this is an interest group for the elderly. Okay, this was a big supporter of Obamacare, actually. Okay, which made a lot of people leave AARP. Okay, but they're very powerful. These are probably two of the most powerful. But let's say you're a farmer. Let's say you're a dairy farmer. Farmers of America. Okay, this group sends people to Washington, D.C. to talk to members of Congress and lobby them to get better deals, better tax breaks, okay, better deals for dairy farmers. Okay, this is what influences our members of the House of Representatives and our senators, these interest groups. Who are they looking out for? Are they looking out for the whole country, or are they looking out for their own special interests? They're looking out for their own special interests. Okay? Now, if these massive organizations influence elections, is that fair? And they can give unlimited amount of money to campaigns. Is that fair to the ordinary American? Okay, so let's say they can't. Okay, these people raise a lot of money. Okay, let's say we don't allow them to spend money to help people get elected. Okay, where do most people get their information about the candidates? From the news, right? Okay, is the news biased? Yes. So you allow the news to spew its view, but you don't allow other people to spew their view? This is a First Amendment issue, freedom of speech. And so what Madison talks about in number 10 is you may not like these groups, but they're a fact of life. Okay, so to do away with them being able to participate is to take away their freedom, to take away their liberty. So the cause of factions is human nature. The remedy to do away with factions is to destroy their liberty to exist. The other way to do away with factions is to make everyone have the same opinion. Now, is it possible to have everybody have the same opinion? Well, what about North Korea? Do they do everything in their power to make everybody have the same opinion? Yeah. Okay. So when Adolf Hitler came to power in Germany, he took over the school systems. When Adolf Hitler took over the school system, he instituted a national curriculum from the Nazi Party that said that every teacher had to teach the same thing to every student in Germany. And then they had the Hitler Youth, where the young people would be indoctrinated in the Hitler Youth, young girls and boys, to give everybody the same opinion. It's a one-party state. That's why we call it Nazi Germany. Not just Germany, we call it Nazi Germany, because all other political parties were banned. So this is what Madison's talking about in Federalist number 10, is that the remedy of faction division that we have in our country is to destroy liberty or give everybody the same opinion. So the remedy is worse than the symptom of us being divided into groups, which is a wonderful statement to warn us not to destroy liberty and not to give everybody the same opinion. Okay? So it's a really important statement. And of all the 85 Federalist Papers, and there's a lot of important ones, Federalist number 10 is probably the most discussed by historians. Okay? And it's rather fantastic. And so I thought I would spend a little bit of time on it. Okay? All right. Let's talk about the test. I think the test is actually worth 42 points. It's 41. Okay. Okay, vocabulary, guys, the vocab you did, you should look over that as well before the test, okay? There's a couple terms on here that aren't in the notes, but in your vocabulary. So the test itself has 10 matching, okay? 10 matching. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Fill in the blank. 10 multiple choice. 3 true and false. And 2 long answers, which you might be able to figure out by looking at the bottom of your review sheet. Okay? I always say possible just to mess with people. Okay? Okay. All right, so let's, we'll get done what we can today. And I'll do this again. I'll do this again tomorrow in the video, so you may not need to watch the video tomorrow. Hopefully we can get through this. And I was going to do the same thing I did today with my people tomorrow. So see what we get through. Okay. A delegate. Someone that represents the interests of another person. Someone that represents the interests of another person. Okay. So like representatives are delegates. Okay. Members of the House. Okay. James Madison, father of the Constitution. What state was he from? Good. Because he came with the Virginia what? To the Constitutional Convention? Plan. Patrick Henry. He's also from Virginia. And Patrick Henry, if you recall, was the most, he did not attend, okay, the Constitutional Convention. He was the strongest against the new Constitution. He was an anti-federalist, the loudest. People respected Patrick Henry, okay? So they respected his opinion against this new Constitution. Ratification simply means to formally approve or officially approve, formally approve. Now, there's not a lot in here about Ben Franklin. He's from Pennsylvania. Ben Franklin was the oldest member at the Constitutional Convention. He, they talk about this in the video I showed. At one suggested, because they were fighting a lot in the convention, that they begin each session with a prayer. Magna Carta stands for what? Great Charter. Bless you. Jurassic Park. 1215. Okay, that gave us limited government. Magna Carta gave us limited government. Okay, the Bill of Rights, first 10 amendments. They secure your individual rights, your individual liberties. And we'll be studying those in the next chapter. Okay. Federalists supported what? The new Constitution. Okay. So when I have governors on there, okay, when these new state constitutions, after we declared independence, each state wrote a state constitution. Okay, they were like their own countries at this point. Okay, and they gave very little power to their governors. Okay, because they were afraid of power in the hands of one person. Okay. Who wrote the Federalist Papers? Yeah, and Jay. Madison, Hamilton, and Jay. And they were written in support of the new Constitution. Hi, Jenny. Anti-Federalist, you got that, right? Okay. Great Compromise. Okay. Also known as Connecticut Plan. Okay. This was over how the legislature was going to be set up, right? So if you go to the Virginia Plan, New Jersey Plan, which you're going to have to, okay, that's for your long answer. You're going to need to understand this, okay? So bicameral, one house based on population, one where each state gets two, the Senate, okay? You know, one population, one equal. Today's the last day of hearings in the Senate for Amy Coney Barrett. So they'll be bringing her up for a vote in the Judiciary Committee. I think she's going to be confirmed. She'll become a new justice on the Supreme Court. Okay. And if you hadn't caught any of that, this is one sharp lady. And she was hammered by questions for 2 days, and she didn't even bring any notes. In fact, at one point, a member of the committee said, "Just curious, what do your notes look like for this?" And she held up a piece of paper like this. It's a blank notepad. so that she could write down something, like if they asked a question, she could write something down, but she had no notes, okay? And she's quoting from Supreme Court cases that they're bringing up and so forth. She's got it all right here, okay? Really smart lady, okay? Okay, of course I can do that too, but. Okay, la. Shays Rebellion, okay, that was one of your vocab words, okay? This is in Massachusetts where, this is under the Articles of Confederation. So this is after the American Revolution is over, and there's a rebellion in Massachusetts by farmers, okay? And one of the things is they have trouble putting down this rebellion. And you had the Whiskey Rebellion as well. And what they were doing, guys, in Massachusetts was people owed a lot of money, and they were putting people in jail for not paying their debts. Now, in this country, if you can't pay your car payment, you go to jail. So the repo man will come and get your car, right? They'll give you a little bit of grace, but if you owe money and you're not paying it, they own the title. They're going to come get your car. Same thing with your house. You're foreclosed, but you're not going to jail. And that's what was happening. Okay? And so Shays Rebellion kind of was highlighted the fact that under this new Constitution, the first Constitution, the Articles, it wasn't working. Okay? And so Shays Rebellion is just kind of one of those things that highlight that. Okay? Articles of Confederation, our first Constitution. Now, would you say it had a very strong or very weak national government? Too weak. Okay. Remember, it's confederal. Remember, confederal. All the power is with the state and local governments. The national government doesn't have much power. They couldn't even tax. Okay? Tyranny. Let's see if I can give you a definition. Basically, absolute rule by a government. Absolute rule by a government that ignores the rights and welfare of the people. Absolute rule that ignores the rights and welfare of the people. There it is. GW. Obviously, he did a lot, but he is going to be the president of the Constitutional Convention, or the chairman of the Constitutional Convention. They'll put him in charge. And guys, by the time of the Constitutional Convention in 1787, George Washington is the most famous man in the New World and is loved by nearly everyone. Okay. Charter that's what was used to grant settlers the right to start a colony. Okay. So the king would grant a charter to people to start a colony. Boycott, refusal to buy goods or services. So one of the things when the British were clamping down on us, we would boycott British goods. Okay. Sticking to the man. Okay, state governments, I go back to that green slide. Okay, they all had the right constitutions, okay? And they all wanted limited government. Now, I don't know if you remember me talking about this, guys, but back when we had the colonies only, the only people that could participate were white male property owners. Okay, some of the states in 1790 allowed white male taxpayers to vote, which is a whole bunch more people than property owners. Okay, so they were expanding voting rights. Now, it's going to be 1920, 130 years later, when women get the right to vote. Okay. Now, black men would get the right to vote in 1866 after the Civil War. Okay, so expanding voting rights, okay, was something that took a long time. Okay, and then, you know, with the 26th Amendment, we allowed 18-year-olds to vote because you had to be 21 to vote. Okay, they changed it to 18. Okay, with the 26th Amendment. Okay, so it takes a long time for voting rights to expand. But it started here. Bicameral means what? 2 chambers, 2 houses. The Stamp Act was really the first tax that was levied. There it is. Taxes on all printed materials. Okay. Presidency. How do we elect the president? The Electoral College. Okay. And what was the compromise on slavery as far as counting them as population? 2/3, 3/5 compromise. Okay. And that was for the purposes of population counting for representatives of the House of Representatives. Okay. Okay, so if you look at this census on the right, okay, the states that had slavery, like South Carolina, Virginia, okay, North Carolina, Georgia, they would be able to have more people counted, which means they get more representatives in the House. They'd also have to pay more taxes, okay, because the national government could tax the states. I don't know if you guys were here for the lecture when I talked about the 16th Amendment that allowed direct taxation of income of the people, okay, that I said needed to be repealed. That's a good lecture. You should watch it if you weren't here. Okay. So that's the 3/5, okay. Boston Massacre, 1770. Right there, okay. Who drew this? The British are coming. The British are coming. Paul Revere. Okay. Intolerable acts was in response to what? The Tea Party. Okay. So 1773, you had the Boston Tea Party. 1774, you get the Intolerable Acts. Now, the British call them the Coercive Acts. We call them intolerable. I like these masks. Right. This is what really starts taking away people's rights. Quartering soldiers in people's homes, illegal searches and seizures, and things like this. Okay. I think I told you guys how John Adams represented the soldiers in the Boston Massacre and got them off from the murder charges. The Intolerable Act said if that were to happen again, if British soldiers or a British subject was charged with murder, that trial would be taking place back in England, not in the New World, which really ticked off John Adams. Because, you know, he went through so much to represent these soldiers and get them off. And now that trial would be held in England. He's like, this is stupid. This is awful. Okay, that's when he joined the Sons of Liberty and said, I'm on the side of freedom. Okay, and the law. Okay, all right. So you got two long answer questions there. Okay, the Federalist versus the Anti-Federalist. Okay, now this is in your notes. Okay. Okay, so there's more arguments really for the Anti-Federalists than there are for the Federalists, okay? But there's arguments on both sides. Okay, here's some of the arguments for the Anti-Federalists. Okay, the national government become too powerful, okay? Could only exist in small territories. It would have to be held together by force. The president would become like a king. Okay, but what's the biggest one here? The most important one here? Yeah, there's no Bill of Rights in this thing. Okay? So if you don't mention that, you're going to lose points for sure. Okay? If you want to mention Patrick Henry, go ahead. That's fine. Okay? High at 63 today. What, 87 yesterday? I was hoping we'd get some rain with this cold front. Okay, so the Federalists, which include Madison, Hamilton, and Jay, right? They're going to counter this, okay? So, you don't need a Bill of Rights. Why? The state constitutions have them. They said, you don't need to worry about your rights, because all the powers of the national government are listed in the Constitution, and none of those powers give them the power to take away your rights. And the states will protect your rights. How'd Mississippi do in protecting the rights of African Americans in this country after the Civil War? They didn't do a very good job, did they? Okay? So, by having a national Bill of Rights, which we did even after the Civil War and they got mistreated, okay, it took a long time for the federal government to really crack down on Jim Crow laws. Okay, separation, right, segregation of the races, okay, interracial marriage was against the law in Virginia into the 1960s. Okay? So it took a long time for the Bill of Rights to really be incorporated into the states, although it was. And really the biggest one is this case right here, right? Brown versus Board of Education, 1954. Okay, that was a turning point, which, by the way, came up in the Amy Coney Barrett hearings yesterday, Brown versus Board of Education. And as she described it, super precedent. When a court makes a decision, it sets a precedent, and that is a super precedent that will never be challenged or changed. It's like the Constitution itself. Separation, segregation is not equal. Okay? All right. So these Federalists I have that, what I just wrote up on the board, okay? Okay, but this one here, they argued that the three branches would check each other and balance each other, okay? So that no one branch become too powerful. So like the president couldn't become too powerful like a king because the other branches would check. Does that make sense? And that's true. That has happened. And the Federalists were right about that, okay? And then there's this one, all the national powers are listed, you don't need a Bill of Rights, okay? So like I said, there's kind of more arguments for the Federalists or the anti-Federalists than the Federalists, okay? The last question, give me a little bit of the Virginia plan. You got to give me a little bit of the New Jersey plan, some of the differences between them, and then tell me what the Great Compromise is, which is bicameral, House by population, Senate. Okay? Good? Peace.